Hello YouTube. You might wonder why I'm at this angle. It's because today I'm going to talk about why I'm switching officially from the Gamecube controller. This is my dear friend. This is a notched Gamecube controller that's cost like $300 with no trigger, C-stick notches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Firefox notches, capacitors, all the stuff. And today we're gonna go through a quick breakdown of why I'm switching, what I'm switching to, my current options, and we'll do a little first impressions of trying to play on digital controllers. Digital controllers is like this, frame 1, box, smash box, and so on. I will do a video where I compare all of these, but for now, I'm only going to talk about the one I'm currently using, and yeah, we'll talk more about everything else later. So let's go in game and we can talk about some of the problems with the Gamecube controller. All right, so first off, the Gamecube controller is a very flawed controller, but it is also a spectacular controller for its time. It cost what, like $30 in 2002? And everyone loves, you know, the feeling of a GameCube controller. I don't think you can really argue that. Most people still play GameCube controller, almost everyone at the top level. I still love the GameCube controller for what it is. However, as time has gone on, there are some problems with the GameCube controller. Namely, first, they're not consistent. Both the analog stick, the C-stick, the buttons, the L and R buttons, even these buttons, they all vary from controller to controller. There are many smaller problems such as PODE, snapback, and many other things, but the most inherent problem is that even though most of these things are fixable, getting the same experience from one GameCube controller to another is not very common. If I pick up my other controller that I have, it's very different because it doesn't have all of these mods. And they sometimes break, and when they break, you have to relearn how to play Melee a little bit because the controller is different. Now, outside of that, what are its problems? The big problems that I honestly see is that you have to get notches, which is expensive. It takes like 6 hours, and only like a couple of people in the world can do perfect notches to allow you to get good angles. The actual biggest problem I have with this controller is simply it's not made for Melee, right? Compared to the alternatives, which are specific controllers made for Melee, this one has a big problem, and it's not actually designed to play Melee at a professional level. It's an amazing controller for casual, and even for Melee, it's really fucking good for its time. But you need all these mods to make it good for Melee, and even when you mod it, it still has many problems. For example, all these buttons, they're all kind of mushy, they're not great. There is too much spread out on your index fingers and your thumb. Your thumb does basically everything except for the L and R trigger and the Z button. And for Melee, that's a big problem. With Fox, for example, you want to jump, which is the X button I use, or the Y button, and then you want to do C-stick aerials for the most part. This is a big travel time. That's both straining for the hands, so not ergonomic, but more importantly for me, since I don't have big hand problems, it just takes time. So what I opt to do often is I swap my grip. I go from this to this. Now I can press C-stick and then up right away to do Fox up smash, for example. But the problem is that these things are not very easy to do. It takes time to swap grips and many other things. For me, the absolute biggest problem is consistency from controller to controller. Other people have stated very high issues with how ergonomic the controller is, that they have hand pains, and I do think that's a valid concern, but I will also say that if you take good care of your hands, you can definitely play any character on the Gamecube controller and be pain-free. If you want a video on how to take care of your hands, hey, hit the like button, subscribe, and maybe I'll do one. For now, let's talk about some other controllers and how they fix the main ones I have with this. Hey, before we start this review, I want to say that I am not affiliated with any of these controllers, but I did get review samples from all of them but the box. I bought one of these myself. This one is a review copy, but I did buy my own before I got offered a review copy. So that is worth knowing because I was already planning on testing this one and other controllers out. I am also biased against the box for reasons I will not talk about here. So keep in mind that I am inclined to be biased. You should always be wary that people can be biased in your interviews. But I think that if you look through, you can look at Crane's review. He went through these very decently as well. And I did get this one, the light, the Smash box, all for free for review purposes, to be clear. They even sent me a cute button that is the Leffen sub icon. So that's basically bribing. So the box I have not bought myself, but it was also sent by the Frame 1 guys to compare. And I personally think that's a pretty good state of confidence when you send your competitors thing to compare with. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. And also, if you want to try out a digital style controller like this, check out my keyboard video. That is the best way to try out and see if you like that type of gameplay. And it allows you to play Melee in like 10 minutes or less using a keyboard. So we're gonna swap over to my Frame 1. So a lot of people will wonder, Frame 1, what is this? This is a shit ton of buttons. What the hell is this? So Frame 1 is a box style controller, or a rectangle as they call it. They essentially made a three-way evolution. We have all three here. We have a Smash box, which was the first. We have the box, which came second, and then we have the Frame 1. They're all good at different things, but if you don't want to wait for the full review, I think the Frame 1, especially the light, which I have here, is by far the best value for most people looking to use this for Melee. It is currently on pre-order and it will take a while, so that is the main problem I have with it, but these are not very expensive controllers. This one is $200 and it's extremely high quality, and this one is only $120. For the record, these GameCube controllers are $300 at least, and they break all the time, and they're not replaceable. Right, so what does this controller fix that the other one does not? So it's quite hard to really show you because you won't understand the buttons, but essentially, if you see the layout I use here with my hands, look at how many different buttons I have access to. I have a lot of different fingers for a lot of different buttons. So this one is jump, this one is B, this one is shield, these ones are the C stick, and then we have A here. This makes it very easy, like a simple motion like this will make you do an instant short up aerial. You still need very good timing, and it's not easy to shuffle like this, but it does take significantly less time because you don't need to travel, right? You don't need to make a jerk motion where you like put your index and slide right down to A or C stick like you do on the GameCube controller. This also lets you use two fingers to piano or plink, as we call it, to do different motions, right? Shine, jump, jump, shine. You can do this for multi-shines. I'm terrible at it now. I have not practiced this, but for a GameCube controller, to be clear, you usually do like this, where you like have to frenetically like just slide over the buttons. I'm actually way better at that timing because I have way more practice at it, but yeah. So that is one thing that's just really nice, having access to all the buttons. Being able to do wave dash is just a motion like this for me, which is very nice. But then there's the directional part of this. And we will go more into these ones and what they change from a regular controller in the full breakdown of different controllers and what they all do differently and such. But for now, the biggest reason why I'm swapping off the GameCube controller is this side, that I have access to everything and can use my full hand. I think it's a big advantage for Fox, a massive one, honestly. And I am currently looking to either use this controller or a controller that is essentially split down the middle here, uses this type of layout for the other one, and then has a GameCube half. So imagine only the controller half for this half. So I can play like this, and then I use these buttons. You can actually use this type of setup with the box by using a nunchuck like this, but this controller is honestly pretty bad. The stick is not great, it's a bit too tall. The grip here is not super solid. The gates here are not amazing, like how the controller slides into things. The L button is not great. So many people have tried to use a nunchuck, but I think almost no one actually stuck with it. I'm currently making a custom made, or like with the help of someone else, controller that has this layout, and then it cuts here and then has like a cut GameCube controller. So it will literally be like half box, half controller, right? And I'm gonna try out that one. But basically, I have resigned myself that I will essentially 100% switch to some kind of different controller than the GameCube controller. Now, there are different options that are coming out. There's the Smash stick that will have an arcade type stick where you hold like this. There is the Panda controller. As far as I know, we don't have too much information, but it will be an upgraded GameCube controller. So maybe it will be like this. You can probably remap, probably higher quality things, and might have an extra Z button. I don't really know. For now, I'm essentially 100% swapping from a standard GameCube controller. That does not mean that you will not see me play with a GameCube controller ever. It just means that I am actively looking to swap, and I am going to try to find an alternative. I do not really plan on playing regular GameCube controller for much of my playtime. One more reason for why I'm potentially switching to this one is that it's more ergonomic, right? I do think you can play for very long with a GameCube controller, but let's say even if it's 8 to 10 hours, right? And I want to play 10 hours a day, or maybe 6 to 8. That is a lot for someone that is a professional like me. That is not something that I think really matters that much for other people though. I actually don't know if it's going to be more ergonomic. Some people say that way, but for me right now, I'm still learning. And when you're learning, it's definitely not more ergonomic. You're not used to using like your pinkies and stuff like that at all. These buttons are very different. These are directional buttons on the Frame 1 right here. And this one is a tilt modifier, and there's all kinds of things. Let me know if you want to see a full explanation of that, but for now, just know that it takes a long time to get used to this controller and to make this controller as good as I am on GameCube. But because of the current circumstances, I can't really enter many tournaments anyway, so it's a good time to try out. And honestly, I've just really been enjoying relearning Fox and relearning Melee on a new controller. We'll see though. Before I commit to playing on this controller, I will get to like 80-90% maybe with my GameCube controller, and then try swapping back and forth between GameCube controller. I've swapped back and forth from different games, from arcade sticks to GameCube controller, so I do not think that's going to be a problem. And yeah, we'll kind of see what all the different controller options that will come out. Oh yeah, how do they sound? They sound like mechanical keys because they are. They're optical mechanical keys. I personally did not like the sound that much in the beginning, but I've become very, very addicted to it. For the size, they're really small. They're actually like the size of like 2.5 GameCube controllers maybe. And like lengthwise, they're like almost 1 GameCube controller. So, you can use that as a reference. But yeah, that's kind of going to be it for today. I'm going to be learning this on stream, playing it, entering tournaments with it, and I'll be trying out all the other controllers once they come in, Smash Stick, Panda controller, everything else. And yeah, I'm excited to keep grinding, and the full review will be out eventually, so stay tuned for that. Bye, YouTube!